We're back with another Strata Unscripted. Hi, Katharine.
Happy New Year!
Yeah, no kidding. The time flies by, and it is 2026.
And we're 3 weeks in already. Like it's going. And I've been busy, so I don't know. I don't.
You have been busy.
I also don't like do New Year's resolutions and stuff. And like my New Year's kiss this year was like snuggles with my cat. So it kind of just breezed by, and I just
I
really
didn't have you down as a cat
I'm
lady,
excited.
but
Really?
New Year's
Oh, I am the
resolutions
cat lady. So
totally don't do those either. I think it's more important to have a trajectory than to have some sort of either easy or unrealistic objective. So,
I agree,
um,
and I just don't think that you need to wait until the beginning of the fiscal year to make changes. If you're not happy with your life or something in it and it's within your ability to make some sort of change to your habits and then to stack those habits, do it. Just do it when it works. Don't wait till January, the most depressing month of the year. Let's change all our habits then. Yay. Take away all the things that give you gratuitous pleasure all at once in the worst month possible.
all of the
Um,
things.
yeah. Um, yeah, so we talked about like kind of just digging into 2026 predictions. What what we
Well,
see
we all know
happening
that the
for the
housing
year.
market has been a difficult place to be, whether you are a realtor or a buyer or a tenant. It's getting slightly easier on the tenant front, which is timely for you personally.
If
I know
you're a
you've
new
been
tenant, to
looking.
be clear, not if you're an
That
existing tenant.
that is absolutely true. And why is it better to be a new tenant and not an existing tenant, Catherine?
Well, because while rent increases might be unethical, they are not illegal to continue to do above and beyond market rent.
True. But those landlords are going to face a consequence because their probably good tenants may decide that they're going to up and leave. And that would
True.
be a bad thing for them because they'll be recalibrated to the latest market. Of course, there are many people who have been in their rentals for 10, 15, 20, 25 years who are paying well below market rates. And they find themselves in a different situation because they're locked in. They may be in a unit that no longer suits their needs. They may have started a family and now be cramming kids into a one-bedroom apartment with them. They may have had members of their household leave and they're in a bigger place than they require, but because of rent control, they're locked in. So
Basically.
we have different views on things, especially economic wise. Um, but uh, I think that it is a good time, and this is going to be a great year to be a tenant, a new tenant, someone willing to move or enter the space because there is an abundance of supply. There is continued new supply hitting the market over the next couple of years because with the recent economic changes, there's much less funding available for condos and much more supported by CMHC and low lending rates for rental housing. So there's going to be a whole bunch more supply out there. I think that's one of the big and obvious trends for this year, nothing earth shattering. How do you feel about that?
I think it will be interesting. There's already currently thousands of unlisted, unsold strata units. And then there's now the city of Vancouver has just approved the development of 2,200 at market rentals. So, yes, I think we're going to see a lot of supply coming. And to be honest, I don't know. I think that things in the next few years will be interesting. It worries me a little bit, though, to be honest. I think while we can say, oh, this is great, we have all these, policy changes and we're trimming red tape and we're accelerating growth. I think things are going to actually get a lot worse in the next little while for different reasons. I think more the social and interpersonal dynamics that are going to arise from all these conditions are going to create some problems and some bottlenecks in the existing systems that will be interesting.
And are these stresses that are new or are these stresses that have just been building over the last decade?
No, this is things that already existed. I mean, what I'm thinking about is things like CRT and disputes that already you see waits upwards of 18 months to get through to the CRT. I think with the number of multiplex units and other housing supply coming in, you're going to see those numbers double over the next few years unless they come up with some other plan to support the CRT and resolving strata disputes. I think we're going to see a lot more uneven, inconsistent decisions arising from there. We've seen that the BC Supreme Court has started overturning far more CRT decisions than they have in past years recently. So that
100%.
already kind of confirms that suspicion for me. And honestly, I think that it's going to start to get ugly in terms of repairs, maintenance, and costs. And that's where it's going to get worse because, like, we were chatting about this before about the idea that, in my mind, the VRs and the NWs, they were built to a different standard and quality of that generation. And then they might not have necessarily be maintained to the highest standards of qualities, but you would find that those buildings oftentimes were more consistently maintained. And then as you get into the next generation, the BCSs and LMSs as strata plans, you're seeing development that is not as high quality, and you're seeing ownerships that are choosing deferred maintenance and piecemeal repairs to their buildings. So you're seeing like lower quality buildings that are like lesser maintained. So I think we're going to see a lot of these cohorts reaching the end of their life cycle sooner, and no one's really paying attention to strata. The government's kind of said, "Nah, we're hands off." Apparently, this Minister of Housing lives in a duplex, so strata is easy. So there's no focus on strata. And so it's again, I see all these things getting worse at this point.
Okay, we're nerds. Let's break this down for people that don't know about the BCSs and the LMSs and the VRs. Age of buildings, like what decades were the good buildings built? And when
so the VRs and the NWs is the old stuff. That's your grandpa's. That's the silent generation buildings kind of thing. And then you get in, and the ones that are the LMSs and the BCSs are the newer ones that are probably between, I would say, like 1990 and newer. So like the ones that are like 20, 30 years old right now, they are not being maintained as consistently, I would say, as a stereotype than the cohort that was built like 60 years ago. And again, like, so can I point out that I've heard a lot of policy and things online about faster, more affordable housing. Now, so that's there. We have these two. Now we know about the iron triangle over here: speed, price, quality. So if we're making fast, affordable housing right now in the year 2026, what are we going to have? We're going to have a bunch of low quality stuff, right? We're going to have really bad quality stuff. So every generation is losing quality, but we're paying more for it. So when owners are coming in right now in 2026, they're like paying $600,000 for their unit. And they're like, "Oh, I've prepaid for my unit, is good now." But now you're going to actually have to put in that same amount into maintaining it over the next 30 years of its life. So you have to pay for that unit twice, essentially.
Well, you're paying for it 3 times because most of us aren't paying that 600 grand in cash. You're going for a mortgage. So over the life of your mortgage, you're going to pay that 600 twice too. So you get to pay 3 times.
Yes. Yeah. And so you have people who are at this place where they're mortgaged within an inch of their financial situation right now, and they're being given buildings that are just by nature of the system not built to the same quality. And so they will need more frequent and more expensive maintenance, also because that's just the way things are being built right now. Things are going to get bad. But I also feel like, not to make it totally doom and gloom, there are pockets of trust forming where the communities are creating things outside of the system to lean on each other, to support each other, to educate each other. And once those start to grow and those groups are stabilizing faster than those that are not leaning on those nodes of trust, the systems and the governments will start to adopt those policies that these groups of trust are creating. So I think it will get better. And I'm really proud to be a pocket of trust that is growing. But I think we're headed for uglier first at this point.
Yeah, I think certainly with respect to existing stock, the special levy situation in BC is very scary. You have well over 100,000 owners every year that are facing special levies, and last year that average levy was something like $7,500 per unit, and that is on top of your strata fees. So, a very significant amount. You see that disparity when you look across provinces, because in Ontario the condo fees are a couple $100 a month higher. A portion of that is for higher utility use. They have colder winters and hotter summers, and so they've got some of
Infrastructure for
that.
snow removal and stuff
Exactly.
too.
They pay a little bit more for their property management for reasons that I think are entirely
They have
reasonable. And
they have smaller portfolios. They usually so I spoke to someone who came
yes,
from Ontario. They only maintain one building. It's
sometimes we see 2 or 3, but they are
maybe.
much, much less in terms of the number of buildings. They are generally bigger buildings, so there's something to be said about that. But I think that they're still undercharging for property management in Ontario, and despite those economies of scale, it is still higher by quite a bit than BC. And so they have those 2 factors, but the other and biggest difference between BC and Ontario condo fees are what they're putting aside into their reserve funds. And it is not because there is a full funding requirement in Ontario, it is adequate funding. So they have a very different dynamic and approach to saving for capital projects. And I really like it. I think that we should be paying to maintain the communities that we're living in as we are using up their useful life. And the BC approach of we have to put away 10% of the operating budget, which is completely disconnected to your future capital needs. And we'll pay for it when we need it, is just a way for perhaps the generation that you're referring to pass that buck on to the next guy who's already mortgage strapped.
It's basically, like SOL, who's the unlucky person who will be stuck with this unit when the levy comes due. And that is such a narrow-minded, short-term way of thinking. And it will be successful in a very small amount for that group, but it's not the way to go.
It is a fairly illiquid asset too. You buy into a strata, you own it. There are a lot of transaction costs associated with getting out of it. You've got property transfer tax, you've got your realtor, you've got all sorts of things that will cost you money when you move, and if you're buying and selling in strata. So these are not easily exchangeable liquid.
Suspending reality in my head here. I'm like, why are we not the kind of society where we want to pour into our community as a strata, so that collectively we're competitively trying to raise the value of our building as a community? We want the best building on this block.
You've got competing interests.
It's so weird,
when you've got investor owners, their calculation is net operating.
Why do we not want our investment to increase in value? And I think the problem is we're not understanding what to value. I was thinking about we had a conversation earlier today, just for frame of reference for those listening, with Design Roofing and Strata Engineering and the 2 of us, to talk about Strata Gal Live event coming up, live AGM. And one of the comments because we were talking about how to approach, we're doing some activities, it's gonna be really fun, but the comment that Yang made was, one of the common sentiments is, if they overspent. And then I wrote down a little question here next to it that came to mind, and it is, how are we valuing one another? So why are we not wanting to raise this up? Why is it not beneficial to all of us to all raise this to be why are we thinking about giving each other money is obviously a terrible idea. Exchanging value for the work that our vendors or our councils are doing or whatever. Why is that a bad thing? It's so odd.
It is odd, but you do have these differing perspectives. So, as a resident owner in my home, I'm very happy to invest in it for the future. I want to live in it indefinitely. I don't know when I want to leave, but it's not for at least 10 or 20 years. So I want it to be safe. I want it to be comfortable. I'm willing to invest in it.
But that's what tenants want and are willing to pay more for. That's what Airbnb guests want and are willing to pay more for.
It is true, but how much more? And if you were an investor owner of the home beside mine and you had a tenant and they were paying a market rent, which is based off of whatever someone is willing to pay at the present time. How much more or less would they pay if that owner had invested the required amount in a new roof today, as opposed to trying to squeeze another 5 to 8 years out of it? And I would say that the tenant's not going to pay more than a couple of pennies more on their monthly rent for there being a new roof on that home.
You also got to look at it in not just exchange of like the money that you're going to get out of them in rent. Like, so if you have raised the value of your strata building and now you can attract a more stable long-term tenant who likes a nice building and a good community, then you are paying probably less for repairs of the unit, wasting less of your time dealing with complaints or bylaw infractions or other things. So like my point too is about how like if they spent, they overspent. We're not looking at like the social benefits, like how much time is your council wasting dealing with hackneyed jobs of doing patches every 6 months versus let's just spend the money to do that project and then we can just put in a proper maintenance plan with a good vendor and then we don't have to spend all our time on it, because all of our time going to it, that is resources too. Like we have to think about the other. We're only valuing dollars instead of social capital or like our time. Or reputational. Like, okay, so you want to be the investors that like cut things like super close to the budget. You know that there's a whole bunch of YouTube videos you can find online for every municipality about the strata corporations never to buy into. And sure, you can be cheap and you can be a jerk as a council, and then you might be in one of those videos. So like what are you also standing to lose besides money is my question, I guess.
No, it's a good question and one that merits further discussion. It's just difficult because you are in an environment where you've got competing interests and you've got a huge disparity in people's capabilities. Some are hanging on by that thread. They're maxed up by their mortgage. They are barely making ends meet. They can't afford an extra $100 a month to put towards the reserve fund, and they sure can't handle a $7,000, $10,000, $50,000 special levy. And I'd say that a lot of them have some very rude surprises in their future, and they may well find themselves in a position where they have no choice but to move as a result of a major project or an inability to get extra funding, if that's the situation they find themselves in today.
I agree. I want to tell you a story. It's like really, really sweet, and I'm going to omit all the details though, because this was a confidential story. It was there was a building where they had a special levy coming up, and there were owners that expressed support of the project, but also expressed that financially this would be very hard for them. Another owner anonymously paid the special levy, and it was like $5,000. And this has happened. And I asked about it, like the leadership, and within that brokerage, that had happened more than once throughout their portfolio. And I was just like almost in tears hearing about this, especially given the details that I will not share. But like, oh my God. So there's, that's what I mean. Like there's pockets of trust forming. Like it just, I think right now we can't really look to what all of the official statements, all the government policies are saying, necessarily all the things that are being said from the C-suites. I think we have to remember at this particular juncture, as things are going to get worse, that we have to look to each other as well, and we will find encouragement there, and that will build, So that is like one of my favorite stories in Strata that I've ever heard in my life, actually.
I haven't heard that story, but I love it. That's great.
I've never heard of it happening in the city, to be honest. This is now because I'm working with a Fraser Valley brokerage, but I don't know. City folks, we don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly those of us who can give, like to give, and try and find good causes for it. And perhaps this one was just one where they were able to make a more direct impact a little bit closer to home.
That's true. And actually, speaking of those who give too, I'm really excited to work with Design Roofing for the upcoming Strata Gal Live AGM. The first time we actually ever met in person, because we only ever talked over email and stuff, was at the Design Roofing backyard barbecue that they do every year for Connect Place Hospice. because that's a cause that's like super important to Kim Wallace. But the way that I've heard through other people too is that, you know, they put a lot into planning that event, and it costs them to put it on, but that it's for Kim and for design, it's also specifically about bringing people together for a community event that will include everyone. Like, there's a lot of events that occur in the industry where you're not allowed to bring your spouses or children, and they absolutely want everyone to bring their families to that event. So it's like pretty cool, I have to say. So
it was great. They had one of the worst weather days of 2025, I think, for theirs. On the other side, though, it was rain, so it was probably a good day for new business. So
fair.
And for a great cause. So
it was really cool.
The ones I felt particularly bad for were the ice cream vendors, because they were standing in the rain off at a distance, and what would have been at any day on the prior 2 weeks a huge lineup was very quiet.
Burgers were awesome, and they had a caricaturist this year, which was really fun. I don't think that they had done that the year before, so that was really cool.
No, but I had Kim on recently for a webinar, and we talked about roof maintenance, and we talked about how having a line in your budget makes it happen. And I think that is a great reminder to everyone living in Strata that to the extent you can itemize what you intend to do, that will give you better insights and control over how you're spending your money. And it will ensure that those aspects of maintenance that might get you another 5, 7, 10 years out of key capital assets like your roof can happen. And it's through that preventative work that it happens. So great to have Kim on talking about
more transparency for owners too, to be honest. Like Strata managers will have two theories or schools of thought with budgets, and one is that they want a larger R&M category so they have flexibility. But then the other camp is my camp, is the one that you want to break it down so that it's easy. Like, you can use repair and maintenance for small stuff, but you don't want to have to think of things in doing coding of invoices. You want it to be really clear. And at budget planning time, you don't want to mess around with what were the variances. You want it to be accurate. So having your own line items. So like I tend to like it that way. And then that way, if the council wants to know where you're at any point in the year, or the owners, when they look at the income statement, it has more context. If it's broken out, then
what's happened, what's yet to happen that year. I agree with having funds available for.
Well, and sometimes, so like they don't plan for roof maintenance and you have to take it from somewhere, then it is challenging if you've itemized everything on your budget and there's no extra space. So it's plan for it, plan ahead so you don't have to try to find space out of nowhere.
Plan ahead, definitely. You need to do these things. You want to extend the life of your communities and your buildings and their assets, then you got to do it.
Well, and I think too, thinking about what I said earlier about how buildings, the quality is going down, and it's going to, I think as a result, become incredibly important moving into this year, that from the get-go of the development and handover of a new Strata corporation, that the council and the ownership need to take consistent, regular maintenance very seriously, or else they're going to come against very large capital projects before the end of their life of each component. And it will start, they start to stack as they become overdue, those projects. So I think that depreciation reports are going to become much more popular. They're going to be the coolest kid on the block this year, 2026, the year of the depreciation report. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
We still see
the year of the DR. That's what it is.
That don't have a depreciation report or claim not to have one, even though they're way over the 5 units. And we've got a bunch of others that we've seen that are more than a decade old, 2013, 14, 15. And thankfully, the new cycle means they're all going to have to be updated. And it is so critical to get an understanding of what is coming up. The engineers do not have a crystal ball and will not accurately predict the time and cost of every single item. They just help you understand about when and about how much each of those items is going to cost and how long it's going to last. Yeah. And if you haven't done it for more than 5 years, your ability to understand the current state of things is so disconnected from reality. And I'm delighted that we've got this cycle going on. And for those that don't know, it used to be 3 years, but you could waive it indefinitely or AGM. And now it's you got to do it every 5 years if you're more than 5 units, right?
That is interesting because it's also the same way that a lot of HOAs were set up under the Business Corporations Act as their standard head leases would specify that you have to get it within 5 years of development and then update it every 5 years. Like that's a really common wording for those types of bylaws for HOA or HOCs, sorry. And so I like that they've put it in here.
Sorry,
it's
what's
also
an
the
HOC?
easiest. Oh, a homeowners corporation. Sorry, homeowners association would actually be a co-op under the Societies Act. Homeowners corporation would be under the Business Corporations Act, and that's usually leaseholds on First Nations land. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I totally forgot where I was going with that.
There was a really good train of thought, but
no. So depreciation reports are also the first line of defense in building your maintenance schedule as a strata manager or a council. So you can do it in a pinch with the insurance appraisal, the list of all the components there, but it's not as good. But if you don't have any recurring maintenance as a council, get that depreciation report and use it to take the list of the major components to fill out your maintenance schedule. And then you can kind of look through to piece out what the recommended maintenance is and use it to put the rest of your calendar together and then reach out to the various vendors that you work with to fill in the rest of the details. But the number one starting place is the depreciation report for everything. Like I hate getting a new client that has not had one done. Seriously. It's all my pre-reading to learn about you. Like you want me to trust like just what Bob said? No, I want to know what the experts said about your building. Yeah. Right? Yeah, poor Bob. God, he takes a lot of heat from me, I gotta say. Yeah, every time I meet someone named Bob, it makes me laugh instinctually in my head. Like,
it's funny how names go that way. In the UK, there was a reference to a Dave, and then don't be a Dave. And of course, we've had a Karen situation in North America for the last number of years. And so, yes, there are certain names that have been characterized in a certain way, and it's really not our fault what our first name is. So, yeah.
Fair. I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Events. I want to talk about the events because you did some in person last year. We were one of the supporters of that education series. It was so much fun. People had a great time, and you were able to build on that and do something already this year. Tell everyone about that before we get to what's next.
Yeah, I'm excited. So I've been building education for Advantage Property Management out in the Valley for the past year. And I suggested that we bring StrataGal over to their clients. And Mike and Jackie absolutely loved the idea. So we just did night one of StrataGal Live last week with their council clients as a group. It was sponsored by TELUS. Shout out to them. We had such an amazing time, and I built a little bit more to it this time because every time you run a training it gets a little more battle tested. We just had such a great time, and it brings people together in a way that allows them to lower their inhibitions a little bit and lower their defenses, and put them into the most common scenarios that they're going to see as council members, but they're fictional. So they're in a safe space and there's no right or wrong answers. And you can see, I don't know how many, there's something really special about doing in-person training because you can see the click in people's eyes. And it was interesting too, because it's something that Carla said when we were chatting. We were talking about the moments in meetings where you know that it's gone off the rails and how you know it's pulled back. And the things that we talked about were you notice when that one person's doing this and the rest of the crowd is kind of shifting. The tension in the room has turned to your way versus they still are confused. So in-person training, in-person AGMs, I find are so invaluable for that reason that it's way harder to read the room and very impossible when half the people are off camera on Zoom. So there's so many of those moments that I got to observe last week where council members were having little click moments, and it was so much fun.
What
So
I
I'm
would say
excited.
is
We've got
somebody
night
who's,
2 coming up
yes,
basically
good.
this week.
I mean, like, I'm a pretty dry guy, and in-person stuff, always a little uncertain about it. It was really cool to see how it made people feel and how that brought them to the place where they understood, and then you just weren't telling them things. And I think that that was the impactful part, and something that I mean, I don't know, you just don't see it very often. I think
Thinking of
it
something
was very
one of my
impactful.
old bosses said to me. He said, Catherine, you can lead a horse to water. They would always, I get that a lot, but like I'm impatient, right? So I want to lead the horse to water and like force it to drink the water. And so over the years, that's not worked really well for me, right? So now I'm like, okay, well, I got to lead the horses to the water, and I'm going to make it the most irresistible and amazing water ever. And that's kind of how I feel about strata training. It's hard to get the investment to do it, and it's hard to get people to accept that it could be fun and that they could learn and that they could change their opinions. So I have to make it the most irresistible training that I possibly can to do that.
And you do, and it's really cool. Strata is not a fun topic, right?
No.
It's really not. It is the
No.
next level of government. It's usually charged. It involves all of the things that make life complicated.
Yeah.
Money and politics and where you live and how you relate to people. It's very messy. And so, this
It's
sort
like
of thing
messy,
is,
but it's literally so mundane too.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's chaotic, mundane. It's just not like you think, oh, crazy politics, money. No, it's not like sexy politics and money. It's
yeah.
like boring stuff, right?
And
Like
I
something I tell
really,
newbies is,
mhm,
do you like boring, dry academic reading? No? Well, get over it. There's going to be a lot of it. Like, and I say that the first day in training.
yeah, yeah.
So,
And I mean, Strata Council members, they're volunteers, right? Like
well, I don't say it to
this is
them,
tough.
okay? Like, just the
Yeah, like they
licensees.
don't have a choice. It's the licensees, and the managers, I've told you, I think have a very challenging job, and anything that can be done to make their lives easier is a good thing, because they need to focus on where the human input is most needed, and there's a lot of that in Strata.
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to do this week, actually, is talk about money and maintenance. So this week is night 2, and we have more people signed up, and On-Site Restoration sponsoring this week. And then night 3 last week is bylaws and conflict, and that's being sponsored by Power Strata. I'm really excited. It's really fun to do it in a different group of council members, different demographic and area of the Greater Vancouver, because even though strata is a strata, Fraser Valley has different problems than Vancouver City has. And there's all the same problems, to be clear, in terms of there are interpersonal problems, no matter what. But there's just different places that they tend to accumulate and bottleneck within the same system. That's all. So it's interesting.
Really good point.
I mean, it's interesting for
And
me.
that's
Sorry, to be clear.
that's not open invite. So if you're not lucky enough to get an invite to
No,
nights 2 and
sorry, that's
3,
that's a
you
closed
can't
exclusive
come.
event for Advantage clients. But
But
the upcoming Welcome to the Fiscal Year, March 7th and 14th, is open, free for council members and licensees, and it's gonna be so much fun. Yeah.
it is going to be great. Some of those issues we were talking about this morning. How many people can come to this event, Catherine?
I think we have it capped as 50 in person.
Right.
So we got lots of space for you. There's going to be brunch boards and coffee, and it's going to be, I don't want to give too much away, but it's, like there's so much that goes into an AGM and the politics behind a meeting that happen ever before the gavel calls that meeting to order. And so this is making a fun, interactive way of exploring the dynamics and the motivations of all the owners that happen before the AGM, with just a regular AGM notice. And then the subsequent week is the Zoom meeting itself. And that is, again, open and free to council members, licensees, and that is going to be virtual, so it'll be open to the entire province to attend. If you're in BC, you can attend.
Right.
To the
So night one, March 7th, day one, March 7th, it's brunch,
yes.
in person, day two, 14th, virtual. Anyone can sign up to that second one, which is great. For those that can do both, they're obviously going to get this pre-AGM discussion at the first in-person session. What are those that show up for the AGM supposed to feel? Is it like showing up to an AGM without
it
anything?
would be like if there's an owner town hall the week before and you happen to do it as a Saturday brunch. And of course, like every AGM that has a mixed ownership, some of them come to the town hall the week before and some don't. And so we're going to essentially get to observe all the dynamics that would exactly happen in a real strata. So
it is going to be
It's going to be fun. It's going to be like murder mystery. There's going to be like hidden clues, and there's going to be like if you ask certain people things, you could get different information. And, oh God, I was just
that sounds
weekend filling it up.
And crazy to you, like it does to me. Trust me, it's actually really fun, and you should be there. So, I'm into it. And it's
it does sound silly. It does sound hokey, but the way that I think that I pull it off is that it's never crazy. It's always the most median average strata things that happen, but somehow it's just funnier, So, yeah.
It is going to be great. So yes, I'm looking forward to that one too.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Predictions from you, Tom. I've done a lot of talking as usual. Predictions from you for 2026 for Strata.
Strata.
Or just the industry. You got insight to a lot of data, and this is the thing. We have a lot of data out there, and I feel like people need to stop just collecting the data. You got Eli report. Like, you don't stop trying to like use it. So like for 2026,
we are trying.
How can people?
You'll see some stuff from us soon that will set out a picture of the condo story in Canada as we know it. We started in British Columbia. We have a much clearer picture of what's happening in this province, but we have insights across the country that we are going to bring to light. And I hope that it causes everyone to have a better understanding of the frameworks, the differences between different provinces and their respective approach to regulation, legislation, dispute resolution, all of those things. So I think you will start to see a bit more harmonization over the coming years across the country, which is good for people and good for us, because there are some learnings that we can take from the CRT we have in BC and the CAT they have in Ontario and use that as they're applying these sorts of dispute resolution solutions in other jurisdictions. And there's just such a disparity in the way that information around condos and stratas are shared, collected, and utilized in each of the different jurisdictions too. So there's a lot coming on that front. And obviously we think that we've got a role to play in seeing some of that surfaced and have some of those discussions that can lead to better outcomes over the medium term.
If you had like a strata counselor or a strata manager brokerage that was your client, and this was like in the ideal Stepford 1950s Pleasantville world, how would they be ideally using the information from Eli report to make their perfect future?
Perfection is
progress,
unattainable, but progress would be good. I mean, having that first order of magnitude as to how are my buildings. If you're a property manager and you've got your portfolio and it's 200 buildings, yes, your individual managers know about each of their buildings, but you as a branch manager, how much do you know about your portfolio as a whole? How is that portfolio? How are those owners? Who's got a world of hurt ahead of them that may or may not understand that? And how can you educate and empower them to do better over the coming years? How can you understand which of your managers, other than the feedback that you get from owners, is helping to prepare these communities for their future and doing a good job at implementing what they're doing. And we're putting a lot of effort into trying to figure out how to solve some of those problems. And then from that macro picture, getting down into those that need the most support and help. And again, you get to the fact that every Strata manager's got a super busy, super hectic life and inbox, and their evenings are consumed by meetings, and it's chaos. And if we can help them zero in on where that most impactful decisions, those most interesting conversations will happen, I think they'll be able to put these communities onto a better trajectory. And that's my hope.
Yeah, I like that. So let's make it the year of the depreciation report and the Eli report then. All right, 2026. Be smart with your data, learn and grow. Insights. Yeah, love that.
Okay. Thanks, Katharine. Okay. Should we call it here?
Yeah, let's call it, because if we start down another digression, it'll be like another half hour of me talking. So we're good for today.
We'll speak soon. Thanks so much.